Hey everybody, how's it going? Johnny here, smoking a cigar, and I got a Red Bull. So I'm ready to dive in pretty hard today into Trump's fourth week as president of the United States. Waiting on Connor here, but just wanted to take this opportunity to remind you all that we do a weekly stream here on the One Human History channel in which we analyze the Trump presidency. And just want to remind you all to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And Connor has just arrived, so we're going to get right into it. Hey, Connor.
What's up?
Nothing much. Sorry. Literally a helicopter's flying over right now. Is the wind blowing into my microphone a lot and causing like a sound?
Not crazy. There's not a. It's just you are outside. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I really want to be outside. It's nice out.
And it looks nice out. It looks much. Is that a cigar? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I take some puffs on cigars from time to time.
Crazy.
And
this is not the Johnny I knew.
I didn't smoke cigars when we were living together.
I don't think so.
This is a terrible cheap cigar, but they sell it down the block. So
I smoke more cigarettes now than I did when we lived together. So things change.
Well, this is kind of like my way out of smoking cigarettes because you don't inhale, and it gives you a little buzz, helps you focus a little bit more, which is definitely something we're going to need to be doing today in light of all the crazy changes that have been happening in our government, in the world order, as a result of 1 month of Trump's presidency here in the United States. How are you feeling about all that?
Fatigued. I'm feeling like I'm already. I was just watching a clip. I was having issues getting StreamYard on, and while I was having issues, I was watching a little Last Week Tonight. And
I watched that too.
Yeah, the one with Steve Bannon talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
The newest John Oliver one.
Yes, the Trump 2.0, and I was like, this is. I mean, he's right. If you just jam 50 stories in, like, you're just like, I guess something's happening, and I can't pay attention to all of it.
Donald Trump, very bad indeed. Oh my God, what's going on? No,
bad boy,
very bad.
Bad boy,
you're a bad boy, Donald. Bad. Isn't John Oliver is one of the ones that's most commonly shown in compilation videos of people daring Trump to run for president. Back in like 2015, he was like, I dare you, do it, please run for president. And like,
probably.
I guess it was worked out for him because he's relevant, mainly because of the fact that Trump won twice.
I don't know. I feel like I listened to him more before Trump. I feel like, and maybe this was already happening with the show and its trajectory. Maybe I was already getting tired of it. Maybe it was because I had just graduated with a political degree, and I was like, let's talk about other things. But I was like, during the early Trump years, I had gotten real tired of John Oliver. And he was just complaining the whole time. That's not what the show was. The show was like, let's dive into interesting topics. And instead it's, let's look at why everything is bad and why you should feel bad. And I was like,
I also don't like I really don't like his audience. It seems like it's a big clapter show now where it's hard for me. I still like John Oliver to a degree, but it's hard for me to imagine him saying something really audacious on that show, because unlike Bill Maher, for example, who does piss off his audience quite a lot, I can't imagine Oliver saying anything that would contradict everything that people in that audience already 100% believe.
Well, and here's the thing that goes into that, and this is something I'd love to talk about. Well, come with me into my house.
Is it okay if I smoke in there?
I want. We smoke in here a bunch.
Cigars?
Certainly not cigars. But Patton Oswalt, do you remember that comedian?
Yes, I remember. Not just remember him. I mean, he's still Patton Oswalt.
He someone I have not thought about or watched in a
True,
while.
true.
I watched him a lot when I was getting into comedy as a kid, like not like getting in doing it myself. Like I was like, wow, his oration skills are incredible. His thoughts are not like everybody else. Who's, I mean, you know, one of the leading voices of the alternative scene. Um, so, or the second wave of the alternative scene. But anyway, um, he posted a picture 2 years ago with Dave Chappelle because I think Patton
Oh, I
came from
remember this.
yeah, Patton, I believe, came from the Baltimore scene first. And so he was like, hey, this is someone I came up with. It's amazing to see his success. Like, good friend of mine. And then, and then he had to post an apology. Like
Yeah,
within a
Chappelle
week.
was like, "Thanks for the photo." 5 minutes later, so the thing about trans people is,
Yeah.
and Patton Oswalt's like, "Oh shit, and those days, yeah, for sure, because I would say a lot of the media companies, most of the media companies were doing DEI, and a lot of I mean, Netflix is still, you know, you watch movies. If you watch movies on Netflix from the Trump and Biden era, you see that clearly promotion of diversity and an agenda of diversity is
Yeah.
behind a lot of the decisions that Netflix makes,
Well, I
which
think,
isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just sort of like they weren't just saying like, here, we're going to do a movie, but there's going to be a bunch of different ethnicities represented in it, but the ethnicities and also gender identities represented in Netflix shows always contain some sort of progressive message.
yes.
For example, the Squid Game 2, it was noticeable that the first ever transgender character in the Squid Game series is the most honorable, like the one of the most honorable characters ever to play the Squid Game. I mean, that character never does anything dishonorable.
Don't
And the
tell me what
thing about
happens. I still haven't watched it. I
okay,
don't
but
plan on watching it,
I
but I still
mean,
have.
I love the character. The character's awesome, and I do love the idea of like I think it's very realistic to portray a veteran who is transgender. I've known a lot of transgender veterans and people who serve, but people who served. I know a guy who served in Vietnam as a sniper and then changed gender to female. So it is a common thing, but um, I am spoiling some of this for you, but I'm not spoiling the whole show for you. But it is sort of like, it's noticeable that media platforms like Netflix and others were not just diversifying their casts, but
Yeah.
also promoting the same ideas that we saw written in Biden's executive orders on DEI and things like that. And so I could imagine that in those days for Patton Oswalt to distance himself from Chappelle made a lot of sense career wise.
We have a lot to talk about Trump wise, but I really want to go into this idea. Oh, I just lost internet. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm on 5G. It'll be fine. Okay. I was talking with Ryan Hamilton, who has a Netflix special, and Matthew Broussard, who's he's been touring for a long time. I don't think he has a special on like Netflix or anything, but he definitely has a YouTube one. Anyway, they're both like rather thoughtful comedians. Ryan Hamilton's been talking about where comedy has been going in his act. So, like he's talking about crowd work. Like his act is talking about comedy right now. And Matthew Broussard is just someone who loves to talk about that kind of stuff. And we were talking about where comedy is going, because comedy is often the voice of the underrepresented, because you're able to lash out and punch out at it's not like a punching up and punching down thing. It's like because their voice is heard less, the good stuff is really going out. There's something to really fight against. There's a real point to be made, because it's like in politics how it's easier to say no to something. It's easier to say something is bad than to say, well, this is the solution, which is why Jon Stewart is the greatest of all time. because he doesn't need to have any real beliefs other than if you worked at 9/11, how about you give him some health care?
Except they're trying to draft him for 2028 now.
They can't. He's got to stay pure. Please.
He's undraftable.
Please, Johnny Boy. Please, no Zelensky's. Please, please, please.
We got to get into Ukraine today, by the way. I just want to let people know. I want to let all the 0 people watching our stream know right now that we will get into what's going on with Ukraine, because that's something I want to talk about today. But go on.
Let me actually. I'm gonna hit 2 more friends up about the stream, but one of the interesting things that I'm feeling is that it's been a heavily progressive voice for 12 years publicly.
Right. That's been what would you call it? That's been the larger sort of cultural paradigm.
Yes. One second.
Maybe I can get my cousin to watch us. Someday we're going to have too many followers to even
to be able to do this.
Yeah. I'm live streaming on YouTube.
Yeah, if you guys are
now,
rewatching what we're doing right now, just skip forward 30 seconds. I'm just sending the link to some people, and we're all good.
I can maybe cut this out, but I'm kind of lazy. One of the things that always slows me down in terms of content production on YouTube is laziness. Just generally, like the amount of just boring, like mind-numbing, stupid work that you have to do to put out videos. It's just like there's so many aspects of it that's not fun. So me going in and like editing one of our streams is something I don't want to get in the habit of doing.
I pay for CapCut, which I can no longer update because they're related to TikTok.
Because of Trump.
I don't know whose fault it is, and it doesn't matter. It's whatever.
Doge. They're firing everybody at StreamYard. All right, but anyway, you're saying.
CapCut has been really helpful for me to just upload a video, put captions on, whatever. So here's the comedy thing. Yes, so many people, because I was like, one of the things was like, yeah, well, Shane Gillis and the Kill Tony guy, Anthony, whatever the fuck.
Fauci.
Whatever his name is. Tony Hinchcliffe.
Tony Hinchcliffe, yeah.
So he is got big with his show, and the Dr. Phil guy is big. I don't really know if he's Republican, but he's friends with them.
You mean matter. Dr. Phil?
The fake Dr. Phil.
Oh, Dr. Oz?
Dr. No. It's this comedian Adam Ray, who does a fake Dr. Phil show.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Anyway, these guys came to prominence during Biden. Yes, and that always is going to happen. But I think the floodgates of you must be progressive have been broken down. And I don't think, and I think with like the mass amount of votes that Trump got, the fact that he won the popular vote, I don't think it's going to be the same sort of, well, the progressive voice is back on top again. It's like, well, the progressive voice was kind of the prevailing voice, even if it wasn't the prevailing comedic voice. Even when comedically people were starting to allow themselves to say more words, I think that was happening culturally. I think saying like retarded was just coming back because people were tired of getting in trouble for or needing to say, you had to say all the right things all the right time or every time.
Yeah.
And
I agree with that.
That's broke. I think the levee is broken.
Well, I remember I have like a personal story. I remember being in school and there was a girl in our class from Syria, and she got a lot of shit for being from Syria because we were in 3rd grade or something, 4th grade, and we were little assholes. Sure. And she was having a tough time. And then one day this teacher came in and she started screaming at us for being racists and for everything horrible we were doing to this girl. And it just made her life worse because having like a liberal lady come in and wag her finger at us. What the hell is going on? Sorry, there's. I think I'm being told that this is a trash take in a very, because here comes a trash bin. Okay, officially a trash take, I guess.
Incredible.
But, sorry about that. My point was that, right or wrong, the net effect of our sort of like our teacher wagging her finger at us for our politically incorrect behavior, wagging her finger, it increased, it made it worse for her because we all just laughed at that teacher. And I think that as a whole, the progressive movement has seen a lot of failures because often the interaction is the progressive person wagging their finger and telling you, stop saying that, stop doing that, stop acting that way. And people just generally don't respond well to that. They don't like being told what to do, even if they agree with the overarching mission.
Yeah.
They react, they tend to, their inner troll comes out when they're treated that way.
Yeah, I feel like that's also deeply embedded in like the nation, in the culture of the nation, and how we became America is that they were like, we're going to tax you like this, which is significantly less than we are taxed by our government, by the way. It's like, it was insane that, and also America was paying less taxes than most of the other colonies or the other places.
Yeah, but why are we supposed to pay for Britain's wars? I mean, even if you're just raising my taxes a little bit, which is going to make a big deal for me as a colonial farmer with a small farm.
We're paying for our own wars right now.
Right, because we became what we fought against. We became Great Britain. I mean, we are the, Washington, D.C. is now the far away entity that is, taxing us in order to support our imperialism. And that's where most of our taxes go, to the military industrial complex. So, we became what we were fighting against in the Revolutionary War, in my opinion. And Trump, he's going to fix it right now. He's fixing it right now. All we need to do was elect the host of The Apprentice, and that would fix our imperialism. Well, it seems that, at least for the time being, the Trump Doctrine has emerged in public life. The Trump foreign policy was, I would say, the first major move in Trump foreign policy, because up to now all we've had is just rhetoric and like a temporary ceasefire in Israel, which doesn't look like it's going to hold.
The ceasefire wasn't even real. They're still bombing the Palestinians.
Right. Well, the ceasefire was that they ceased firing. But and apparently Hamas is like way more interested in keeping the ceasefire than Netanyahu is.
Yeah, of course, because Netanyahu's been destroyed.
Why would he want a ceasefire? So this is the similar problem with Ukraine, which is, why would either side want a ceasefire at this point? Putin doesn't really. I guess Putin is more interested in having a ceasefire because, although he would like to drag it along as far as he can, because the Russians are now just taking as much Ukrainian land as they can, which was similar to what happened in World War I, when they said, okay, we're going to do a ceasefire at 11 o'clock at the 11th hour of the 11th day of November. And in the weeks leading up to it, they just tried to grab the Germans and the French, and everybody tried to grab as much as they could up to the last second, so that when they went to the negotiating table, they could say, well, you're not going to make our troops retreat from what we've already fairly won in the war. So Putin is going to come in and say, everybody's saying, well, Trump is going to give those, and Pete Hegseth, who in my opinion sucks, said, yeah, we're going to give obviously the Crimea and the the 4 oblasts in eastern Ukraine are going to Russia, but when they actually get to the negotiating table, Putin's going to have more than that. So what happens then is, now I think Putin is going to say to Trump, okay, well, we will leave this place and that place, and we will step back from here and there and let Ukraine have those places. And then that way Trump can say, I negotiated him down and I made the Russians retreat. But these are just areas that the Russians are saying to themselves, okay, we're going to push here and get as far as we can get so that we have something to give up that doesn't mean anything to us. And then the US can say, well, we played hardball with the Russians and got some concessions.
I feel like Trump's deals are not as, you're going to be winning so much, you're going to be tired of winning. I feel like we're not actually winning. I feel like,
well, the worst thing he did, the worst thing was give us the minerals and we'll send you the weapons. If anything discredits, and I know Trump wants to discredit this, and it's worth discrediting because it was, in my opinion, it was bullshit. But I don't know if I would discredit in this way because you're weakening your negotiating position. But for the last 3 years, we were told that this is a fight about democracy and freedom. We were told that Ukraine will win because it's right and Putin is wrong, and what Putin represents is, going into the dustbin of history. Well, what Putin represents is not going into the dustbin of history. What Putin represents looks like is going to be the norm in international relations, which is that violence can now be used in negotiating the borders of my country and deciding conflicts between countries. Yeah. There's no longer a supranational structure that polices these conflicts in Europe. Now, well,
the moratorium,
we're back to might makes right.
The moratorium on, well, anyone can just bomb anyone, or I feel like Russia had been breaking there is no land grabs for anyone anymore. If a small portion of a country wants to become their own country, set them free, and America or NATO or China will support them and make sure that they can become their own entity. And there's been like more peace now, with the exception of like what's going on in Africa. Is apologies to Yemen and everybody else, but like there's been more peace now than like there has been for a very long time in world history. So that after World War II, or I guess after the Cold War or Vietnam, I don't really know when the peace started, but like no one was really getting more territory, and I guess that has now changed because China also took back Hong Kong to some degree, or at least it's no longer like a democratic city. I'm sure they're going to take back Taiwan. And Russia's becoming the USSR again to some degree, just in landmass, not in like structure or anything.
But not in ideologically, but well, they're just not like devoted communists anymore. But what's interesting for a guy like Putin is like when he talks about the great history of his country, the greatest, most powerful moment for Russia in its history was those 70 years when the Soviet Union ran the show, because those are the years when it modernized. Those are the years when it became the other global power along with the United States. So how do you go back? And you can't just go back and say, well, the communists just did everything wrong, but the greatness of Russia somehow shone through. You have to be like, well, maybe we don't believe in communism as an ideology, but you can go back and say, Stalin just sort of used that ideology to maintain his power, but during his reign, he essentially like created the structures that made Russia great. And so And Putin himself was a KGB officer. So although I know he's not going to be waving a red flag or closing, he's definitely not going to be burning churches. But he's not. He built churches. I mean, during his presidency, I remember living in Russia during the first iteration of Putin's time in office, and I was traveling all around Russia. I traveled all across the east and all across the west, and almost in every city that I visited, a church was being built because Putin was trying to reestablish the connection of Russia to its Orthodox roots. So I think orthodoxy is replacing communism as the religious kind of ideological foundation, but the structural foundation that the Soviets brought, I think Putin would like to see those things return.
I want to talk about that for a second in a broader sense term thing. It was weird to say that way. Everyone's been inside since the pandemic. Everyone went inside.
You can leave your house now. It's over. I don't know. Have you been inside this entire time?
I've been inside this entire time.
Okay, it did end. I just want to let you know.
But I mean, lots have changed. I'm in the service industry, so I have seen. I promise this will make sense. I have seen and talked to like the owners of the businesses I've worked for, or the GMs and whatnot. And the younger kids are certainly not going out as much as the past generations have.
Sure.
Then everyone's staying at home, finding the things that they like to do at home with your video games, your live streams, which is what we're doing right now, and with all the movies you can watch for free. You pay $8, $10, whatever a month, and it's for free now, or just steal it. People steal things online. It's doable. All of those things have made it so that the going out culture, or the people people aren't going out and experiencing the towns they live in, the cities they live in, or anything like that, but it's reestablishing a religion in an area, making sure that people go out. Well, it reestablishes community, so you're not talking with people online, who I love to do. I get to communicate with Johnny, who I don't live with anymore, online, and my other friends who I've lived with, or who I'm very close with, or whatever. These are relationships that are important to me, but also the relationship of the people who are your neighbors are really important, and reestablishing churches and gives them not just a place to be, but also probably a place to go after. And the reestablishment of knowing your local establishments gives you more of a community, and also gives you the ability to tell the churches, hey, talk about this, and we need kind of everyone believing this thing. All of those things really help, I feel like, a country's morale, especially at a time like this.
So you think that, are you arguing for a revival?
I think it's helpful to a society to go back to those structures. It's bad
that's essentially what Vance is arguing. I mean, this is what he said in his speech to Europe, that he was criticizing Europeans for essentially not being conservative enough. He was basically saying the United States is going conservative. We're abandoning progressivism. And he said basically that we expect Europe to follow suit. And the interesting thing about it is the common wisdom, and it was so predictable that the reaction from the American media after Vance's speech would be, how embarrassing to have this Yankee go into European Parliament and tell Europe how to, conduct its affairs. But the thing is that there is a lot of support for the kinds of things that J.D. Vance is promoting in Europe.
More conservative than we are. Wholly.
Yes,
are they not? Yeah.
And I follow the European right for my research, and I have seen a flurry of support come out from people who think that Europe is controlled by a clique of progressives who are not democratic and are forcing Europe to cling to woke ideology or forcing Europe to cling to whatever progressive causes. And Vance is trying to say to them, it's over. And a lot of people in Europe have been praying for the reign of progressivism to end. Certainly in Poland, I think that you're going to see the Conservative Party. I predict now that the Conservatives will win the Polish presidential election. I also think AfD is going to grab a lot of seats in the next German election.
First, people. If Johnny's right, we got a predictor person on our hands. I thought I was going to come up with something better in a second. We have a Nostradamus.
Should I do something if I'm wrong? Should I do something on stream if I'm wrong about that?
I would love to see. Yeah.
How about I have to shave my mustache, but only here, and walk around for a day with a Hitler mustache? No, we won't.
When people ask you,
and I have to send my heart out to everybody as I go.
When people ask you what you're doing, you're like, it's just the Michael Jordan. It's just I love Laurel and Hardy, and I love Michael Jordan. That's what's going on here.
But I mean, whether they win or not, people underestimate how popular conservative, the kinds of ideas that J.D. Vance believes in are. And there are a lot of people in Europe who are hoping that the sea change in America will result in a sea change in Europe. They're not all just like intellectuals, like from the Jean-Paul Sartre school, just like, that's not Europe. Europe, like as you said, there is a strong and growing conservative what do you call it, backlash to what George H.W. Bush called the New World Order, which ended up being heavily favoring progressive liberal policies.
I think so. You lived in Poland for a bit, and then I have another friend who still lives in the Netherlands, and I think both of you for the last few years have both been saying like it is way more conservative here than you think it is culturally, not just politically, but also the people's values are a little different. And like when people think of Europe, I feel like they think of like the French wanting to work less, or they think of like pub culture.
Yeah, or like gay German clubs or something.
Yes, but like those are like outlets.
Berlin.
Like the German clubs are an outlet from a more stringent society. Right. Drinking a lot after work. Like one of the things in Ireland, people are like, they drink warm Guinness there. No, they don't. You insane person.
Have you seen like European Parliament lately in the last year and a half?
I should watch. I don't know.
It's like, I mean, there is the let's just say the Trump perspective is very well represented now in European Parliament, and almost daily you have conservative figures from Poland, from other places, who I focus on Poland. That's why I kind of know a little bit too much about that, and I'm a little Polano-centric. But you have daily speeches on the floor of the Euro Parliament calling for an end to the Migration Pact, which is a conspiracy theory, maybe a true one, maybe a false one, that Brussels and the liberals of Europe have been conspiring to, okay, this part I don't believe at all, to replace Europeans with Syrians and other migrants from the Muslim world and Muslimify Europe. And so when you are able to create that fear within your society that this Brussels entity, which is ruled by some of the most lizard-looking people you've ever seen. I mean, Ursula von der Leyen and Scholz in Germany and all these people, when you have Vance up there saying we need to go back to traditional values, and then you look back in the crowd and you see all these European lizards. You see Tony Blair sitting out there, and you see Justin Trudeau, and like that's supposed to be Europe, but these people, or no, Europe. I know Canada's not Europe, but these people who represent Europe now, having J.D. Vance go in there and lecture them is not the same thing as having J.D. Vance go in there and lecture Europeans. I think he's counting on the average Europeans agreeing with him who have resentment for this clique of lizard people who are trying to replace Europeans with Muslims or whatever. And sadly, I wonder if the Schengen visa-free regime in Europe is in trouble now, because part of the reason why there's been so much movement and migration in Europe is because they've made it easy to travel around Europe. There's no visa. You can just cross the borders. You almost don't even need to carry your passport with you. And it's wonderful. It's one of my favorite things about Europe. And I would be crushed if that ended. If we had to get a visa to go to every individual European country. Now, maybe there'll be like a EU visa we'll have to get or something. But anyway, my point is simply that people are underestimating what the effect of Vance's speech is going to be. They're writing it off as like he made a fool out of himself in Europe. But I personally think that he's set down the new Trump Doctrine, which has been, repeated by the likes of people like Steve Bannon, who believe that the future for America is to achieve hemispheric dominance. Rather than be a global power, to be a hemispheric power, to control the Western Hemisphere, to leave Europe to Europe, to, I guess, basically let Russia and China do what they will on that side. The only stopgap we would have would be Europe. I suppose we could go into Africa, but
all right.
What do you think about that? Like batten down the hatches.
I'm ready to give Trump a weird amount of credit. This is me going crazy here. This is me going like, what if Trump got a public win for his dumbest supporters? He's like, we had the tariffs, paused the tariffs because we got something good. All right, the fentanyl that I used to talk so much about, it's gone, even though we already agreed to it and even though it was already fine. The fentanyl's done. So Canada's on our side and Mexico's on our side. What if he did that so that he could chill his base and then show Canada and Mexico, hey, we're going to start working with you. I've shown my dumb people we're on the same side. You can have your population be angry at us for a little bit. And then let's start moving so that it looks like we're not taking you out. Because if it was just Trump making deals here and there, everyone would get very worried. So if it looked like to his dumb supporters that America's doing good, to the middle of America or people like us, we're like, yeah, it was not really that. Nothing really happened. And then all of a sudden up top, he's like, okay, now that everyone's distracted, now that the people who don't like me are angry and the people that do like me are happy, let's get things, let's do what was Bill Clinton trying to do? The NAFTA? What if Trump did an actual NAFTA while everyone is distracted?
Well, we have NAFTA already, and we had USMCA under his first term, which was a renegotiated version of NAFTA. I am skeptical about Trump's approach to Canada. And here's why. It's hard to come out in defense of Canada when, number one, they've had Justin Trudeau in there since time immemorial, who is a complete joke. And Trump had a really good situation there where Trudeau's on his way out. Trudeau's been discredited. Okay. There is a conservative movement in Canada, and there is a strong representative of that movement who could be the next prime minister, Mr. Poilievre. And it helps Trump a lot to have the Canadians booing the national anthem and then have the United States just whoop the Canadians in a hockey game immediately after they booed the national anthem. Like, these are little things that make people go like, yeah, we're showing Canada. But here's my question. If you know that Canada is probably going to turn conservative in the next few months, wouldn't it risk kind of spoiling that by basically creating a situation where, for Canadian voters now, the Conservatives are identified with the guy who wants to make their country the 51st American state? So now when Poilievre goes out there and does interviews, I'm assuming all the reporters are going to be asking him, and all the opposition figures who run against him are going to be asking him, and at question time, he'll be berated with this question: do you support Canada becoming the 51st state? And he either has to say yes, in which case I can't imagine he'd have any future, or he has to say no, which puts him at odds with President Trump.
So his new thing is Canada first.
But Canada first...
He has said no. We quote, we will never be the 51st state.
Trudeau said that.
So did Poilievre.
Poilievre said that too, right? But the thing is, he can say it, but this is problematic for him, because his sort of rise to power is going to be heavily based on the idea that Trump is bringing in a new era, and that the Trump Doctrine is going to reign. And now you have to sort of like, part of the Trump Doctrine is making Canada the 51st state. So I feel like if he had just kind of kept things, if he had not said just that part and done everything else he's been doing with Canada, I feel like the Conservatives in Canada would have a much easier task before them. I feel like he's complicated their task by introducing this element of potentially annexing them. So if I were Trump, and I would never presume to advise our dear president, I would have not, there's a lot of things I would have not done because I'm a different person than him. But I would have not said that Canada should become the 51st state. And I think that's going to seriously strain our relationship in a way that Trump's fans are perfectly comfortable with, because they're like, yeah, fuck Canada. But here's the thing. We're leaving Europe. Europe is going to start spending more on its military. Canada is 1 foot in North America, 1 foot in Europe. So why wouldn't Europe just sort of deepen its ties with Canada? And that could seriously mess up Trump's entire hemispheric dominance proposal, because now you'll have Europe basically extending to Canada. Like, Canada will be part of Europe in a sense. So, they could put the tariffs on Canada, and then Canada could just totally reorient its trade with Europe. And as Europe sort of builds militarily, Canada can build militarily. And Trump could end up sort of putting us in the, putting us in a position where we're surrounded by hostile enemies on the south and northern side of the border, Canada and Mexico. Because if Canada starts to become emboldened and become a more powerful force in North America, Mexico is going to be tempted to join forces with them over the United States. And maybe increase their trade with China. So
it's not going well.
Well, that's one mistake in my estimation that Trump made. Now, things could go a different way. Poilievre could get in there, and Europe could hold fast to its sort of like liberal agenda. And Poilievre could say, well, the 51st state thing was just a way to troll Trudeau. And now we're going to just, sort of become, what would it be? Make Canada great again. MC-ga. It's really, really, it's really an interesting time to live in the Confucian sense of, may you never live in interesting times.
Sure. It's always been something going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
With that said, we've got 15 minutes left. Let's move into our grade. How do you think Trump did this week, and what grade would you assign him?
We
didn't even talk about Doge, so maybe you want to say a few words about that too. I don't know. You decide.
Kind of. I was going to talk a bit about Elon. One of the things I sent you, or I sent our group, was that Elon Musk, his ex, settles a lawsuit with Donald Trump over the January 6th suspensions. And he paid $6 million for Donald Trump. And then all week, all we're hearing is Doge this, Doge that. The picture of Trump sitting down and Musk standing up is odd. Elon Musk's son talking shit to Donald.
That was pretty funny.
Bizarre. Does it mean anything? Probably not. But because kids are kids, kids are crazy. Nobody knows what kids are thinking. But what if when the rare nights that Elon Musk is putting his kid to bed, the once every 10 days he sees his child, he's like, Daddy's going to run the world. I can't do his accent is bizarre. But he's like, oh, daddy's in charge. Daddy runs it. And then the kid sees Trump talking. He's like, shut up. It's daddy, not you. I've had, it's been rough. I didn't think last week I gave Trump a D grade, and I don't think anything was good this week. Mm-hmm. It was all Musk this, Musk that. Let's cut the IRS right during tax season. Let's cut all these and like we talked last week. There's fat to be cut in everything, sure, and let's make everything run a little bit better, a little bit quicker. That's great. But this week has been really just a lot of chaos, a lot of deals gone awry, plans gone wrong. And a lot of talk without a lot of good execution. For me, there's no reason to change my grade from last week. I know it's a week-to-week thing, but it's 2 weeks ago was tough, or last week was tough, and this week, nothing was good. It was all Elon Musk. It was all dumb things Trump was saying. It's the Pope. So we were talking about J.D. Vance. Maybe going back to a more religious talking about religion and bringing back religion into the American way of life and culture. And then the Pope is like, you should be ashamed of yourself. So it's not but
Vance very adeptly addressed that head on.
Did he? What did he say?
He quoted during his speech the Pope, but not this Pope. He quoted John Paul II, the Polish Pope. And I think that was his way of kind of answering back of, a lot of people in Europe, especially in Poland, as you can imagine, are not fans of the current Pope as much as they were of John Paul.
Sure.
So I think he was sort of kind of making a statement there about the real Pope versus the George Soros progressive Pope.
I have some family that really don't like this Pope. Some really conservatively religious family who's like,
a lot of people. It's a real issue in the Catholic Church right now over this Pope.
It's such a weird thing to compartmentalize, to be like the Pope is chosen by God, and then they're like, but not this one. And that's super interesting.
Well, the president is supposedly God picks all the leaders, right? So the issue is okay, God picked Trump to be president. Did he pick Biden to be president last time? Did he pick Obama to be president? Because they were. So, my answer to that is always just that if you read the Bible, God doesn't pick leaders because God doesn't always pick leaders because he thinks they'll be the best for the country. God often picks shitty leaders because if you read the Torah, not the Torah, the biblical texts post Torah, the Israelites, in the famous scene where the Israelites ask Samuel to ask God if he would provide a king for Israel, God says to Samuel, okay, I will, but tell them that they're going to have to pay all their taxes to this guy, that they're going to have to send their sons to go die for this guy, and that they're going to have to send their daughters to be his concubines, and that they're going to live under his thumb. Like, he literally was like, don't take a king. But if you want one, fine. And so he gave them a king. And then you read the book of Kings, and they were all terrible. There was like maybe one good king in the book of Kings. It's one of the craziest things about the Bible. People think the Bible is some book that like is like for like nerds and like weirdos who want to like, stop watching porn or something. It's, it's like a holy book. Like, now you read the Bible, man, read Kings. It's a massacre. Masakra is in Polish. It's a disaster. God puts lots of kings on the throne. He also puts kings on the throne to punish Israel sometimes, like during their captivity. He literally sends the Babylonians to like enslave the Jews. So, I mean, the idea that God picks who is the leader doesn't necessarily mean he picked the person who's a good person. But anyway, that's just a little theology.
Lesson for you.
So is that it? You got
that? I think that for me, it's
so deep
because it's been a tough week.
Yeah.
The ICE stuff is tough. The Elon stuff is tough. The deal stuff is tough. And what Trump is saying is not matching up with any actual wins that I'm seeing.
Okay. I'm going to give President Trump a C this week because I think the flood the zone strategy is brilliant and it's working very well. I think he's pretty much reduced the Democratic opposition to a laughingstock, although they've done more than him in some cases to make sure of that. He's sending these Democrats from one department to the next every day. They run over to the Department of Education and they make fools of themselves in front of the Department of Education, and then they run over to USAID. Oh wait, he's closing USAID, and then they run over here, and they run here, and it kind of reminds me of like those old Scooby-Doo cartoons where they keep running out of one door and then come out of another door, and they're just running, like they're just running back and forth in circles. So he's got no opposition, which I'd have to say shows his that was an effective strategy that's working. So I can't give him a D or anything like that. However, similar to an artillery barrage before a battle, I believe that Trump's strategy has been to soften up the opposition before sending in the infantry. So in the old days, what you would do is you just fire a shitload of artillery for hours and hours and hours. Usually the effect was not to diminish much of the enemy forces, but it was called softening up the forces. So just like the experience of having to sit through hours and hours of artillery is so loud that it actually shakes your physical bones, and people left wars with the inability to stop shaking after experiencing an artillery barrage. I think that Trump is attempting an artillery barrage right now, and he's trying to soften up the enemy. However, in many cases during World War I, the Germans would send all this artillery, and then they'd go in with their infantry, and they hadn't really done much the other side, and then they would just get beaten back, and the Maginot Line would stay exactly where it was. Just, thousands of people would die. So, in my opinion, Trump has fired off too much of his artillery too early in his administration, and now he's in this odd position where he has really no room to make any compromises, or at least any compromises that would be meaningful or helpful to our side, because he's sort of put all of his cards on the table. So when we look at Ukraine, for example, Trump should never have said, "I will solve the Ukrainian conflict in one day," because if he had done a little research on the subject of Ukraine, he would know that Putin holds all the cards right now. And so he's going to go into this negotiation having made a big, having blasted his artillery off and shown everybody how strong he is and how strong America is. And then he's going to ultimately just end up giving Putin, I mean, what is Putin not going to get? Name me one thing that Putin is not going to get from the negotiations with Trump. When the dust settles and everything's signed and the Ukraine war ends, what will Putin not get?
He'll probably get the land. He'll probably get a good deal with us.
Ukraine's not going into NATO.
No.
He's going to get all the land that he wanted and maybe even more. He's going to have a Victory Day parade in Moscow. And he's, our election had something to do with it as well. So it wasn't all him like a puppet master. But he's caused a major rift between the United States and Europe. He's weakened NATO to the point where it may even end. And we're sitting here thinking that Donald Trump, by sheer force of his personality and strength of character, is going to walk out of the room with Putin being like, guess what? We got everything we wanted and we won, Now, I blame Biden's strategy for the situation we're in. And I agree with Trump that we need to find a way out because we wasted a lot of lives. We wasted a lot of weapons. We gave the Ukrainians tons of weapons, but there's nobody left to fire them now. And so I don't blame Trump for that. But what I do think is that and maybe he'll prove me wrong, we'll see. If he wanted to be a stealthy negotiator and find a really innovative and meaningful way out of the conflict that didn't completely throw Ukraine and Europe under the bus and give Putin everything he wants, I cannot imagine what options he's left himself by how he's come out on this. I can't, and the only thing I can think is that in a couple of months, he's about to have on his hands what Biden had when Biden pulled our troops out of Afghanistan. So I think Trump's, here's the thing. I think a lot of Americans are going to support him anyway, because rightfully so, Americans are tired of us footing the bill for everything that Europe does. And I think it won't destroy his presidency, but it's not going to be good for the world necessarily, the way that he approached this. It's not going to be good for deterring Putin in the future. And, it won't fall on his head to the point where he's going to have like a serious drop in his approval rating. But let's say eggs go up a couple of dollars the week that Ukraine loses. It could be his first crisis of popularity. So I'm going to give him a C because I do think that I am concerned about Doge. I'm always concerned about that. I do think the government needs to trim. And I think that if Trump didn't try an innovative solution to that, it would have never gotten it done because the government's not going to fire itself.
Sure.
However, it's tough because I don't trust Musk and I don't believe in the approach Trump is taking. But on the other hand, it's sort of like, well, what approach would work when you're trying to fire, tenured federal workers And, you know, what else could you do other than shock and awe? But, you know, maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll be looking at an administration that's rendered itself helpless.
Yeah.
That gets tangled up in endless lawsuits. And on the same week that, you know, we cede global hegemony to Russia. So because all of those things that I'm warning about have not yet happened, I'm not going to give him a D, but I do think that I predict that the strategy toward negotiating an end to the Ukraine war is either just going to end up giving Putin everything he wants, or the war is not actually going to end and it'll keep going. So,
oh boy,
bad week for the Trump administration, in my opinion. Rough week, and for the sake of America, I hope that I know there's people in the chat who are going to laugh when I say this. I hope that they learn some lessons and do better. But there are also no good options in this situation because of where Biden left things. So, but I just don't know why Trump had to take the chest beating strategy. I think it's sort of like, he kind of reminds me of Tony Montana at the end of the movie Scarface, when he just comes out and just is like, fuck it, grabs every gun he has and just starts blasting. And he does kill a few guys at the beginning, but he ends up getting taken down in a blaze of glory. And I kind of feel like there's a blaze of glory element to Trump's approach that is not going to pan out good.
He may be shooting his shot way too early. There's a lot of stuff going on, but also I think this is kind of needed for the American people that do support him.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about all these things for so long, they've wanted to see these things for so long, and perhaps if Trump does not do super well, it gives America time to heal.
Yeah.
And
I want to respond to one comment from Randus. It is bad for federal employees to be fired, and the trimming is not as substantial as trimming the military-industrial complex, which Musk says he wants to do next, or trimming the FBI. I would only say that, and I know people who are losing their jobs or who are getting shuffled around. I know people who do good work that are getting swept up in this purge, and I disagree when that happens. However, I do also know people, I've seen people I know post on Facebook, I'm getting fired from my job, you know, and then their job is like promoting DEI in Romania. And it's like, that is its own form of imperialism, you know. But
I have a friend who works for the government
and I don't want to pay for that.
Yeah, I have a friend who works for the government who's had like a couple really bad bosses promoted to obscurity. And that's something that regular businesses do too, but it's kind of hard to fire someone from the government.
It's very hard to fire people from the government. That's why they're going this aggressively.
Yeah.
Because it's like trying to fire a professor, you know, or something from a tenure track.
So you hope that that's who's getting fired. You hope that it's the people not doing important.
You hope, but it's they're just flinging a giant sigh, and whoever's head gets cut off. They're not really checking that much. They're only promoting those instances when people get fired for trying to promote DEI in Romania, because those are the ones that prove that their policy is working. So, you know, we just have to, you know, I guess I could go out and scream and protest it, but really all I can do is sit and watch and try to comment on it as it happens. And so right now my comment is based a little bit on my prediction of the future. And my prediction of the future is that Trump's going to have a lot fewer cards to play as the months roll on, because he's played too many strong cards at the beginning of the game. And now he's going to have to back up. So he flooded the zone. Yeah, but then the zone is going to come back and flood him. So all those things all those places where he made a strong stand, he's going to have to deal with the reaction, and it may all come at once. And he may find himself in the same position as the American people, flooded by all the resistance that comes his way, and he's not going to know where to turn, what to figure out, what to fix first. And now we got a budget coming up soon, but budget's coming up, so that's going to be an interesting fight to watch.
I think also if you're all offense for a long time, let's make a Super Bowl comparison, baby.
Yeah.
What's his name? Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest quarterbacks, maybe the greatest quarterback ever. So he's got all the tools. He can do all the things. He's smart enough to get it done too. And Andy Reid, fantastic coach, been there, done that for a long time. They've been running the same offense for years because it always worked. And
right.
The Eagles came with maybe the best defense in the last 10 years.
It was incredible. It was like watching an NFL team play a high school team.
It was defense wins championships. They won the championship with defense from stopping an onslaught. They were fine offensively. They got done what they needed to do. And that can be what is happening. If Trump is just going all offense, over time you learn how to stop that offense and how to redirect the energy somewhere else. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's just this. As we talked about on one of the first two streams, people can't do what they did in 2019 anymore. People can't do what they did in 2018. It's the world changed. And I can't look at my phone every 10 minutes to see a new thing Trump did. I don't want to. I'm tired of it. And other people are too. And I think that we are going to be elected representatives who find the best way to quiet these issues down so I don't have to hear about it every day are the people that are going to rise, the people who can figure out, you know what, this is nonsense. This makes sense. We're taking what he's saying here and moving forward with it. And those people are probably going to be the new talked about members of the Democratic Party who's had so many issues. For another sports team reference, there's no farm team. There's very few Democrat members who are interesting, who you're like, that's a guy I'm looking at. Trump came out of nowhere as well, but there was a lot of people in the farm system. There was Ted Cruz, there was Mitt Romney, there was Marco Rubio, there's Chris Christie, and more people. Those were just right off the top of the head. Those people were all running at the time. Those people, like when Trump first ran, those people were all up in line next. Yeah, oh my! How dare you? How dare you? They are. I mean, yeah, it's bad. I mean, it's bad.
But I would just say that all I'll say, and then we'll call it, is that what's unpopular today can be popular tomorrow. So I mean, I think the Democrats look silly right now.
Yeah.
But if things go really sideways for Trump and Musk in the next couple of months, the Democrats registered their resistance, their complaints, their grievances, and they'll be in a position to say, we told you so. So even if they look silly now, I don't know what else. If I'm a Democrat, what else am I going to do? I mean, even Elizabeth Warren may be going in there going like, I know this isn't helping or moving the ball at all, and that I'm just becoming a laughingstock. But if things change, people will come back and say, well, you said that this was bad. You said that Musk was trying to take over the government, and look, he is. So, then that's an opportunity for the Democrats to sort of say, like, we told you so. So it all depends on what kind of results Trump has. If he doesn't fix the inflation, if the economy gets worse, if our international standing goes down, 2026 could be a good year for Democrats. I mean, the Republicans were just as much of a laughingstock 4 years ago around this time when Biden took office as the Democrats are now. So it's hard to look at how badly and embarrassingly the Democrats are acting and say to yourself that they're completely out of their minds and just like completely. I mean, I think Maxine Waters is completely out of her mind, but I do think I think that they're just all they can do at this point is register their disagreement and hope that Trump steps on enough rakes, falls flat on his face, and then they can be there to pick up the pieces. But it's kind of the simp approach, I guess. They're simping for America's love and hoping that we dump our toxic boyfriend, but that doesn't always happen. All right. Well,
until next week, friends, until we see what happens, smash that like button, hit that bell.
Yeah.
Because we can be streaming at any time, and it's always better to stream with you all. So come join, come hang out next week, and we will be back talking about whatever crazy nonsense is happening then, folks.
All right. See you guys next time. Do pobачення, as they say in Ukrainian. Okay, I have